Hey, welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some homesteading stuff, and the homesteading stuff in this case is going to be about houses and permanence. Now this gets through some stuff that I have to deal with on a different level. You know, there's landlording. I have family members who have property and rentals, and I've always dealt with that aspect of life. I've always been aware of that aspect of life. You know, I've either been a renter or homeowner or homesteader, something, and you do think about it, and I think about it from a different perspective because I've always had to think about forced labor as a child, doing maintenance. And that's mostly a joke. It was not always fun to spend Thanksgiving working on a roof, but I understand the necessity. So, houses and permanence. This is kind of this is a mind bender for me because I've thought for a long time in terms of permanence. You know, I think about how long will it last. If you build a house, right? You want to, and it's going to be multi-generational, and you're going to keep it in the family. You want to build it out of stone. You want it to last for a while. You want it to be there, being lived in, improved, and expanded in 1,000 years. How healthy is that? This is a very valid and important question. And it goes along with things like style of building. So if you were to build a brick building with the right kind of brick, and then it was there in 300 years, it could probably still be healthy. Okay, the brick itself is not going to be a host for mold organisms. The stuff that gets slathered on the brick might be, but the brick itself is pretty stable. And if the work is done right, it should be okay. You know, you're going to have to tuck and point. That's pulling out bits of the words escape me. Pulling out bits of the mortar and inserting fresh mortar, okay, because mortar tends to break down a little bit. Clay brick doesn't. It depends on the type of brick. Concrete brick, you're just gonna, it's gonna last a couple hundred years and it's just dust, right? Modern concrete, we don't tend to build for longevity. We build for a certain lifespan and certain structural needs, and then it just kind of goes away. So, how do you build? What do you do? If you want a 1,000-year house, you're gonna have to build something where the structure is basically a rock or clay cave. And it can be open and airy, but this is what you're doing. And then everything else has to be temporary. The reason it has to be temporary has to do with toxicity and humans and staying alive and healthy in indoor spaces. So right now, people tend to do balloon frame buildings, and over the past century, we've even gotten rid of the idea of lath and plaster or wooden interiors, and now it's all gypsum board. And that gets made out of different stuff, and there's all sorts of new ways to do it. Every year there's some new product, and there's new chemicals to put in, and there's new insulations, and all of it grows mold. And you hide your plumbing and your electrical lines so that you can't see the pipes, so that you can't see them leak. Mold. I'm gonna go with mold here as a kind of a general thing. But dust toxins are a huge deal. Okay, if you have if your interior building surfaces collect dust, you're good. It's gonna get in your lungs. It's gonna get on your skin. It's gonna fuck you up. To greater or lesser degrees. Some people are young and healthy and have a lot of tolerance for this, and their bodies fight it off really well, and that's fine. And some people are young and sick. Some people are old and healthy. There's all sorts of variation. Everyone has a tolerance limit, and this stuff is absolutely not healthy by nature, in and of itself, okay? I can go into a room in northern Nevada where there's particularly bad issues that hasn't been dusted in a week, and if I go help clean and dust it, if I'm wearing short sleeves, my skin's going to break out. I'm going to itch. Other people will sense that. They'll get a little bit like, ooh, I feel dirty, like, ooh. but they won't get the skin melting off breakout. Okay, that's a particular toxicity issue I have. Yay, go for. So we know it's unhealthy. We know the stuff collects and the crap. So you have to have adequate ventilation. Well, the past century has been a century of trying to close up and hermetically seal the buildings, ever increasingly, layers and layers and layers of plastic inside and outside the construction of the house. Triple pane windows, seals, door seals, no air in, no air out. That's not actually a great thing, because that means that the stuff that's in your house doesn't flow out. Microscopic stuff, nano dust, whatever, big particles of dust, skin flakes, your dandruff doesn't go anywhere. So at some point you have to say, like, should I keep this around for 50 years, 60 years, 80 years? A lot of rental properties, you get into an older duplex that was built in the 50s. You go back east and you'll find a lot of these mill house, townhouse units where you've got two houses, and they're individual houses, but they share a wall. They can be, they're individual addresses, so they're not duplexes the way we think of them out west. They're townhouses, and those things get rented out, and they were built 80 years ago. They were built 90 years ago. At some point in time, the rental market is going to shift because of people getting freaked out about mold toxicity and issues like that. And the government's response is to make the landlord pay for everything, put you up in a hotel while it gets fixed, whatever. So there's going to be a swing. There's always swings with this stuff. But for small holders, small property owners, and believe me when I say this, most landlords who only have 2 or 3 rental properties are not swimming in money. It's a retirement plan, it's a 401k, and it's not going to be worth anything for the next 30, 40 years. Okay, it costs a lot of money, you don't make a lot of money. It's not a flipper game. But you can kill these people, you can drive them bankrupt with mold issues, right? So we want to consider that. And that's the market aspect, but it comes into homesteading. What do you want to build? Do you want to build a stick frame house? Do you want to put all of that money and effort into a stick frame house that realistically, purely on a health basis, you should flatten in 20 years? This is a really good question, okay? And it's hard because if you look at something like you do a mobile home, and you do one of the cheaper, lighter ones, and it's only supposed to last for 20 years. Well, 40 years later, people are still living in it because it kind of costs a lot of money to replace it, and the regulations got worse, and now it's going to cost you a lot more for new permits, and now you have to put a foundation down and do this plumbing, that plumbing, and make it permanent. Oops. So what do? Let's talk about houses and permanence. One of the things that's being floated right now in communities is the foam concrete forms, I guess, smart block, stuff like that, and it's EPS, expanded polystyrene foam, on either side. Okay, so you got that, and then you put concrete in the middle. You just pour the concrete in. Good enough. Well, it's lighter weight because you get a 10.5-inch thick wall, but you've only got 5 inches of concrete in there. So a way lighter weight, lots less concrete to move around, and that's fine if you have road access. When you're dealing with that much concrete without road access, things get a little fucky. All right. But how long does it last? Well, expanded polystyrene is called an organic building material. It's just carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, but no CFCs, no HFCFCs, no. Well, yeah, if it's organic, something's gonna eat it. It's true that right now, as far as we can tell, it's not hosting a lot of organisms. It's not bad. It's not bad stuff. If you don't let it get exposed to sunlight or temperatures beyond its melting point, it lasts forever. Okay, no UV exposure, it's not going to degrade in a long time. We don't know what that time is. Okay, we have simulated tests that it's going to last for a couple hundred years. You know, we have simulated tests that polyethylene sheets, plastic underground that you don't fuck with, will last for a couple thousand years. With no UV exposure, and that's fine and dandy. But do you trust that? This is one of those things where I look at it and I'm like, so it's made out of the building blocks of life. Life is going to find a way to fuck it. That's what's going to happen. You know, it's not a sheet of quartz. I've seen mold on nylon strap car interiors and stuff. You know, I've seen this happen. This is stuff that's not supposed to happen too, because it's not a natural fiber. So do you trust it? And then there's straw bale. Straw bale is a really massively wonderful thing, unless it gets wet. The moment it gets any moisture in it, you're absolutely cooking organisms. So that's not a great thing either. So where are you at? What are you going to do? Does this expanded polystyrene foam really give you a space where you're mold free? It's supposed to be there and not be replaced. It's not like if you have a piece of plywood. I hate to use plywood as an example, but plywood's an example. Okay, if you have a piece of plywood, or if you have 1x6 and it's just going, right? You need to replace a board, you replace a board. So where are we at? How does this work? What do you build out of? Do you build permanent, or do you just move into a yurt and replace it in 5 years? What parts need to be permanent? Okay? Do you want a block house for toilets and bath? But should your bedroom not be brand new every couple of years, just for health reasons? This is stuff I got to think about right now. And permanence is kind of a mind trip and a reprogramming that I need to look at. I'm going to have to do another video on this and talk about the cultural implications. So stay sideways and stay tuned.